Hi everyone, I'm Bianna Golodryga and this is a Yahoo News Live report. As we approach the busiest travel season of the year, there are new concerns about just how safe air travel is in the wake of reports that ISIS or one of its affiliates was responsible for the downing of a Russian jetliner. British Prime Minister David Cameron has halted all flights to the region, leaving as many as 20,000 British citizens stranded as he points to terrorism likely at play in the downing of the jetliner.
Look, we cannot be certain that the Russian airliner was brought down by a terrorist bomb, but it looks increasingly likely that that was the case.
Now, if this does turn out to be terrorism, it would be the worst attack in the air since 9/11. Erroll Southers is a transportation and counterterrorism expert. He is joining us from Los Angeles. And Laura Bagley-Bloom is the editor-in-chief of Yahoo Travel. She's joining me here on set. Great to have you both. Erroll, I want to begin with you. What do you make of Prime Minister Cameron's statement that the plane was likely taken down by a bomb? The U.S. has not officially made any statement remotely as concrete as that. Do the British know something that we don't?
Well, that is correct, and it would appear that the Prime Minister has got some intelligence information that if it's been shared with us, at least we're not acknowledging it or we're vetting it. So they obviously have enough actionable intelligence in the UK to suggest that the actions they're taking are appropriate and have to be implemented at this time.
And Laura, the U.S. has not responded to the incident with any sort of change in flight plans or schedules, precisely because we have no flights going in and out of Sharm el-Sheikh or over Sinai in the region in the first place. If this does prove to be terrorism and a bomb, can we expect to see heightened security at airports across the country and around the world, assuming that those flights do come to the U.S., especially now that we're approaching the busy holiday travel season?
Absolutely. I think you can see heightened security right now. My guess is whether it was a bomb or not, the airlines and security is going to be cracking down. You might want to get to the airport much earlier. As you said, we are going into a busy holiday season, so you can expect long lines. They could be even longer with an incident like this happening.
And Erroll, this investigation from the beginning seemed to be very confusing. The Russians and the Egyptians were quick to say it most likely wasn't terrorism. They backed off that a little bit. But walk us through the first step that investigators take in an incident like this. I'm assuming the first step they do is go through the travel manifest. They went through that. No alarms or red flags as far as passengers on the plane. Does that suggest that if in fact it was a bomb, that somebody had access to the plane and planted the bomb in Sharm el-Sheikh?
Well, what you suggested thus far is appropriate. They would vet the crew, they would vet the passengers, and then naturally the next step is going to be everyone that had access to that aircraft before it took off. So we're looking at an incredible number of people that have to fuel, clean, provide food, and other things that go on routinely. So it would be everyone who had access to that plane. The really interesting part about this is that, of course, they did back off initially saying this did not happen. It did not involve an explosive device. But as it appears, as the day goes on, more and more this could be it. So you'll see more aggressive information come out with regards to the people that work there. I'm really surprised that they fired the security chief of the airport with, at this point, in my understanding, no real reason other than he was the security chief. That's very telling.
I've actually been to Sharm el-Sheikh. I was there earlier this year. I did feel that security was pretty tight, though I have to admit I felt safer at U.S. airports. Can you talk about the safety regulations here in the U.S. compared to what travelers can expect to see abroad in Egypt and in the Middle East?
Well, the travel regulations for anyone that would fly here from those countries is pretty much the same. I can say this, that they've got to meet the standard for the Transportation Security Administration to be able to fly into the United States. Would also like you to know that most recently the UK had concerns with Sharm el-Sheikh. They had a complete top-to-bottom audit of that airport, and apparently they met their standard. But the standards across the board, as they are dictated by the regulation authorities, are fairly consistent. But of course, there are those airports in what they call second and third world countries that we have to have some concerns about, if for no other reason, employee screening and vetting and employee turnover.
And Laura, we know this flight was a charter jet. It was a small airliner. Other larger airlines have just preemptively, at least, paused travel over the Sinai until we get conclusive information as to what caused this crash. For folks who are buying their tickets now and trying to get the best deal, is it worth going after a cheaper flight, a chartered airline that maybe we don't know the name of as well as we know some of the mainstream names? I mean, is there a difference in security that folks can expect?
I mean, there actually is a difference in security. And I think anytime you're booking a ticket, you want to go with a major carrier. A domestic carrier is a better idea. You can also look into airline safety records. There's a website called airlineratings.com that lists safety ratings for airlines, and the FAA also releases information. So you do want to do your homework. If you're going to try to save a few dollars, make sure that airline is safe.
And Erroll, is there any sense that we become complacent here at home? Thankfully, we haven't had another successful terrorist attack here in the States. What are you hearing? I'm sure you hear chatter and constant threats that we, as just people in the public, don't have access to. Are we becoming too complacent? And what should people take away, if anything, from this latest headline?
Well, I don't think we're becoming too complacent. I know that there's certainly an overexposure of information that goes out about the red teaming operations that take place at the TSA. Red teaming, by the way, are those operations where we take people, place them in the airport, they knowingly try to compromise the system, and then, of course, they talk about how they did it. I would say this, what we should take away from this as Americans is that there is no zero-risk proposition when it comes to security. If someone wants to get an explosive device on an aircraft, it can be done. 10 years ago in Los Angeles, there was a plot. And in fact, one of the people involved in that plot was a gentleman named Gregory Patterson, who had no criminal history, worked at LAX at duty free, and was part of that plot because he knew the airport intimately. Last year, we had an individual named Abdurrahman Mohammed, who was a Somali citizen who lived in Minneapolis, who worked at Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport, had access to the tarmac and the airplanes as a cleaner before he went off to Syria to fight for ISIS. So we've seen instances where people who have been employed are perfect examples of what could be a homegrown terror threat if they wanted to be in terms of access and capability to get an explosive onto an airplane.
Yeah, and they've already passed the first round of background checks, obviously, to be given privy and access to the plane, and yet there's still threats out there. You know, security experts, Erroll, have been quick to say, you know, not so fast when we're coming to the conclusion that this was, in fact, terror-related or ISIS. ISIS, specifically they reference, because this doesn't seem to fit their MO. We haven't seen a video. We haven't seen any massive propaganda release saying and claiming that this was, in fact, an ISIS-driven attack. Why is that? And does that give you doubt as to whether or not this is ISIS?
Well, I would have to agree with my colleagues on the not-so-fast comment. You have to understand that ISIS is in the marketing business, and they take responsibility for every tragedy they can in order to give them some traction and give them some exposure. I will say this, if we shift over to Al-Qaeda for a moment, and specifically to the online magazines, and in that respect for Inspire magazine has a laser focus on the aviation domain. Every single issue talks about how they have deep research and development into how to compromise security technologies that we have in place around the world. They have an R&D section, research and development section in Al-Qaeda that, if you will, mirrors what we have here in the way of testing machines, and they test against those machines in a reverse engineering way to see what they can get on board aircraft. It's interesting that over time, since 9/11, they have not lost their focus on the aviation domain, and for a lot of reasons. Number one, obviously, the number of people they can kill, the economic impact that they can have, and the disruption to the infrastructure of transportation. So it remains a focus for them, and I can't see why it wouldn't become a new focus for ISIS if, in fact, they are responsible for this.
And I guess some could say the damage was done already without ISIS having distinctly come out and taken responsibility, given that we're having this conversation right now, and unfortunately nearly 300 lives have been lost in this attack. Lastly, I want to ask both of you, and Erroll, I'll begin with you. What advice would you give travelers? There are many tourist destinations in the Middle East region. Of course, we know that the region is in turmoil right now, probably heightened turmoil, more heightened than we've seen in previous years. For those who want to plan trips in the next few months, what would your advice be to them? Should they hold back?
Well, it's interesting you should ask me that because I'm going to be in Cairo in April. I would tell people to go to the State Department's website. The State Department site has all of the countries in the world, and it has a threat assessment that's updated daily that will tell you whether or not travel is advised or not. It'll give you details about why or why not. It's public, and I really think that people should make use of it. It's incredibly detailed, and it'll really help you with your travel plans and decisions if you decide to go or not to go.
Laura?
I couldn't agree more. The British Foreign Service also has ratings, and their ratings are sometimes a little bit different from the United States ratings. In fact, the United States is ranked high on a terrorism threat level, which you wouldn't necessarily expect. But I just think right now you want to be really careful about where you're going. Maybe look closely at those destinations in the Middle East and in that region. Maybe you want to refocus and go someplace that's a little bit safer. Florida might be a great pick right now.
Some good advice and plugging for domestic travel as well. Yes. Thank you so much for joining us, Laura Bagley-Bloom and Erroll Southers. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we always look forward to hearing what you have to say. You can follow me on Twitter at Bianna Golodryga and use hashtag Yahoo Live to let us know what you think about the latest development in the war against ISIS and how it could impact your holiday travel plans. I'm Bianna Golodryga. Thanks so much for watching.